It is hoped the unexpected and melancholy death of young Seider will be a means for the future of preventing any, but more especially the soldiery, from being too free in the use of their instruments of death. Welcome to Historical USA, where we discover the people, places, and events that made America. I'm your host, historian Lisa Weekland, and today we're diving into a tragic and decisive moment in American history, the death of an 11-year-old boy, Christopher Seider. Now, this incident not only fueled the flames of rebellion, but also set the stage for one of the most pivotal events in American history, the Boston Massacre. In the late 1760s, Boston was a city on edge. The Townshend Acts, which imposed taxes on various goods like tea, paper, and glass that I have spoke about ad nauseum at this point, had angered a lot of the colonists. British troops were then sent to occupy Boston to restore order, prevent an uprising, and enforce the Townshend duties. Now, Governor Francis Bernard had been asking for troops since 1766, and his request was finally granted in 1768. Now, the American Customs Board of Commission, also stationed smack dab in Boston, asked for troops to help them enforce the Townshend Acts in the aftermath of the Liberty Affair, which I had done an episode on, and I will link up here in the description as well as down in the description box below if you want more of a deep dive into the Liberty Affair. But basically what happened was the British had seized John Hancock's ship on suspicion of smuggling. Now, ships carrying British troops arrived on September 28th, 1768. On October 1st, the troops disembarked and were quartered at various locations throughout the town. Now, this military presence only added to the unrest and resentment among the Bostonian population. John Adams even described the scene as a declaration of war, and his cousin Samuel Adams declared that a standing army in our metropolis is dangerous to our liberty. We will get back to the video in just one second, but today's sponsor is the Historical USA store. Yes, we have launched a historical merch line. Not only can you get Historical USA merch there, but we are launching a few very special and exclusive collections for you guys as well. I'm so excited to announce the Retro Founding Fathers line. Now, this is a nod back to the 80s, not just the 1980s, but the 1780s, when George Washington was president and America had a new constitution and the formation of a new nation. Now, these retro styles are what I call Miami Vice meets Rambo, and I think they're so fun for the summer. So go check them out at the Historical USA store. You can visit the description box below. But what I'm really excited about is a limited edition Boston Massacre t-shirt that we are offering you guys. The Boston Massacre took place 255 years ago. On March 5th, 1770, the Boston Massacre ignited the flames of the American Revolution, making it a turning point in not just our nation's history, but the fight for independence. So join us in commemorating the courage and sacrifice of those who paved the way for our freedom. This shirt is available now in limited edition at the Historical USA store. So hurry up, because I don't think that this limited edition will last long. Order yours today and keep the spirit of revolution alive. Now back to the video. Now, Francis Bernard also faced a very critical challenge. It was roughly around 4,000 British troops occupying the city of Boston, and housing those British troops were a challenge. Now, General Gage, who we will see a lot more as this story of revolution progresses, had dispatched 2 regiments from Halifax with plans to send to more regiments from Ireland. Bernard met with the provincial council to discuss housing arrangements. The council, however, was not inclined to assist, fearing that a standing army among civilians would undermine their constitutional rights. They argued that the barracks at Castle Williams in Boston Harbor could accommodate the troops, and that the Quartering Act only required additional housing after the existing barracks were filled. Now, housing troops and allowing them to camp out in fields and the commons was one thing, but with the Boston winters approaching, Bernard really insisted on housing them within the town. And he began placing troops in vacant buildings throughout Boston. But with more troops flooding into the city, he suggested using the Manufactury House, which was actually supposed to be vacant. However, the Manufactury House was leased to a weaver named Elisha Brown and had really become home to several families and squatters. The governor then had the brilliant idea of forcibly vacating the building to make way for the troops. However, the city council absolutely hated that idea and refused to implement any such activity. Yet, even though the council refused, that did not stop Bernard. On October 1st, Brown and the residents were given 2 hours to vacate by Sheriff Greenleaf. However, Brown protested, and Dalrympe actually sought other accommodations. However, by the 19th, there was still a lot of unresolved housing issues, which left troops camped in public spaces. Sheriff Greenleaf and the Lieutenant Governor, Thomas Hutchinson, ordered the residents to leave, but Brown refused again, declaring he would only leave by force or a general court order, which they did not have. When Greenleaf returned the next day, he found a weaver exiting through a cellar window. Greenleaf then forced his way in, but was barred from the upper floors, beaten up, and actually kicked out of the Manufactury House. He then decided it would be a good idea to starve the residents out, posting guards to prevent supplies from entering. Any attempts to deliver medicine and provisions were thwarted, leading to children crying for bread from the windows and a growing crowd outside. Now, as tensions threatened to escalate into a literal riot, the governor had the good sense to end the siege on October 22nd, withdrawing the troops from the area. That's not going to bode well for relations between citizens and troops, I don't think, at all. Now, several months later, the monthly Boston town meeting discussed the problem of troops occupying the city during peacetime. Officials in Boston and Massachusetts really questioned the legality of housing a standing army during a time of peace. They argued it violated the Massachusetts Constitution and the English Bill of Rights. See, they believed it would certainly be seen as illegal if it were done in London. I hope you can see now why we had the Third Amendment. I mean, this was a huge issue, this quartering of troops in several cities, not just Boston. Now, for months, many leaders from the Patriot cause had entered into a non-importation agreement where they were not going to buy any imported goods. Merchants that were sympathetic to the cause were not going to sell any of those imported goods. And any merchant that decided to sell those imported goods were relentlessly harassed. But not every Boston merchant caved to the pressure. See, those who didn't found their store windows shattered, homes smeared with dung, and faced expulsion from certain taverns and even certain clubs. They were booed in the streets and found poles with carved wooden heads planted before their shops. Now, one mild-mannered shopkeeper, Theophilus Lilly, continued to display prohibited goods and, as a result, faced threats of bodily harm. On Thursday, in late February, a pole went up in front of Lilly's North End shop. Taking his case to the press, Lilly couldn't understand why, quote, people who contend so much for civil and religious liberty should be so ready to deprive others of their natural liberty, end quote. His situation worsened when he pointed out the existence of multiple brands of tyranny. Now, we talk a lot about the growing divide between the soldiers and the citizens. But what was really happening in towns like Boston was the growing polarization between citizens as much as there was between patriots and troops. See, the loyalists were becoming more radical loyalists, and the patriots were becoming more radical patriots. And this kind of environment really never ends in anything peaceful. Now, the morning after the poll went up, Lilly's neighbor, Ebenezer Richardson, a minor customs official known for carrying a hatchet under his coat, attempted to plow through the sign with a cart. Now, Richardson had a reputation as an informer and an adulterer, and was loathed by many, including Samuel Adams. As a crowd assembled, they pelted Richardson's home with trash and stones. Mrs. Richardson lobbied debris back, but was met with a hail of bricks. With the situation escalating, Richardson produced a musket and fired from a window, hitting 2 boys. One boy was wounded in the thigh and hand, while 11-year-old Christopher Seider took 11 pellets of birdshot in the torso. Now, Dr. Joseph Warren pried the slugs from the other boy's body, who only had 2 wounds, but really could do little for poor little Christopher Seider. See, Seider was born in 1758 to poor German immigrants, and he was just a child caught in the crossfires of escalating tensions. Well, Warren attended to the injured. Brandishing his musket and a cutlass, Richardson resisted arrest. He was escorted to prison with difficulty. See, many in the street preferred a more immediate justice. The mob wanted blood and would have hanged Richardson then and there if local officials had not intervened. Now, in the aftermath, Samuel Adams, ever the patriot, arranged for Seider's funeral and made a public display of what Richardson had done. An estimated 2,000 people attended the funeral at Granary Burial Ground. This massive turnout only fueled the outrage of people in Boston who saw Seider as the first casualty of the American Revolution. The Boston Gazette published an account of the event stating, quote, "Young Seider, an innocent youth, fell a victim to the cruelty and rage of a relentless custom official," end quote. Now, on April 20th, 1770, Richard was tried for the murder of Seider. And despite the court's opinion that the evidence pointed to manslaughter rather than murder, the jury found Richardson guilty of murder the next day. However, the judge would postpone the sentencing until May 29th, 1770. And before the sentencing could take place, well, Richardson had received a royal pardon and was reinstated to his position within the customs service on the grounds that he was acting in self-defense. This decision was highly controversial and only added to the grievances of the American colonists against the British government. Now, the death of Christopher Seider was more than just a tragic loss of a young life. It was a catalyst for further unrest and a symbol of the growing resistance against British rule. It set the stage for future confrontations, including, just weeks later, the Boston Massacre, and played a significant role in the path to the American Revolution. See, Seider's death highlighted the brutality of British enforcement and the lengths to which the colonists were willing to go to defend their rights and liberties. And Seider's death was really only just the beginning. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on Historical USA as we explore the events leading up to this pivotal moment in history. Don't forget to subscribe, Leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on this episode? What did you think? Did you know about little Christopher Seider's death? Was Richardson's pardon fair? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, make sure you follow me on social media. I post a lot of shorts and content over there that I don't post on YouTube. Until next time, remember to keep learning and always remember the past is never that far behind us. Bye.